when I was growing up, middle school, high school, and even to today, I am a little confession about me. My biggest fear, like I know sometimes people would ask, like, what's your favorite this or favorite that? What's your biggest fear? My biggest fear, the thing I'm most afraid of in the world, is heights. Some people, you may not know this about me, some people it's spiders, some people it's like being in the dark when you're a kid or something like that, being alone or something like that. For me, it's always been heights. I remember going like on vacations and things, and I remember we went on a vacation with a couple of priests, and we went to Rockefeller Center in New York, overlooking Central Park, good images of the skyline and stuff. And I remember like other guys are like, oh yeah, look, and they're like leaning over and pointing at different things, and I'm like 30 feet back, and I'm like, I'm good. I'm not going over there. That's fine. Great. I remember the most scared I've ever been with heights. We were in high school. We were on like a school trip, and it was me and a couple of my friends. We stopped at like this little tourist trap in the Appalachian Mountains. So we were walking like these different trails and stuff. We come around a corner, and there was this about 200-foot long bridge. Like footbridge, but it was like think of like the movie Pirates of the Caribbean or like some jungle movie where like it's like one of those like rope bridges that's got like the planks across it. And I remember like when I came around, I saw it and I was like, yay. I was like, I don't want to go across this thing at all. 200 feet long and about 400 feet up. So like we are looking down at a canyon, and I remember like I'm just walking towards it, and my knees are getting weak. Well, my buddy, he's like, hey, ladies first. So we like send some girls that were with us. They walk ahead first, and then my buddy was next, and then I was right behind him, and I was going last mainly because I didn't want anybody to see how petrified I actually was. Right. So we were walking, and like it wasn't ropes, it was cables. But I remember walking down, and I'm holding on to the cables like white knuckles, like my hand is digging into these metal cables, and I'm just like every step, I'm like, I just need to get across this thing as fast as possible. We got to hurry up. Come on. I'm like, just don't look down, look up, keep moving. We get right into the middle of the bridge, and my buddy decides that he wants to mess with the girls in front of him, but he wants to mess with the girls in front of him. So what he starts to do, very simply, is he decides he's going to jump. And he just starts hopping. And I'm like, I'm right behind him. I'm panicking. My knees are weak. I'm frozen. And I lean over to his ear and I said, if you don't walk, I'm throwing you over in this canyon. Like, we will not find you, right? Like, we get to the end. He looks at me. He's like, you all right? And I was showing my hands. I had blisters from how hard I was holding on. I was like, I hate you. I'm never doing this again. I'm going home, right? So whatever. Me and him, we stayed friends, but I need to get new ones. Anyway, there's something about the reason why for me that's always been my fear. Number one, it's not about being high, it's about the splat, right? Like that's the part that freaks me out. Like the idea of like, yay, splat, right? Like that's not good. But there's something about it for me that like really, I feel super exposed and vulnerable. Like that's always been the thing. If I go to a football game or something, and I'm sitting up in the stands. If I'm on the front row and the railing isn't high enough, like I'm like super careful about like standing up. Like it's just the idea of being afraid. But like there's something about feeling exposed. As I'm saying all this, like I feel my hands are getting clammy and my anxiety's going. So I'm not going to go to bed until like 3:00 in the morning. But it's going to be okay. I say that though because I don't know if whatever your fear is, whatever like. It's whenever we get into a spot where whatever the thing we're afraid of gets overwhelming, gets too much, it could be one of those things that just makes us freeze. And it could be one of those things that just, we feel exposed. We feel weak. We feel helpless. Fear is one of those things that like when it gets going and it gets rolling, like it becomes something that is like kind of a snowball that we can't really stop. It's interesting because in our first reading and in our gospel today, there's a lot of things that are taking place, but but despite all the chaos that takes place in both of these readings, there's a lot of fear that's sprinkled on top of it as well. In the first reading, Elijah. You may not know this. It's a popular reading from the first book of Kings, where we hear about how to listen to God's voice in the small whispering sound. But the background of this is that Elijah, there's a bounty on Elijah's head. Like somebody is trying to kill Elijah. So what he's doing is he is running away and hiding. So as he is running away, as he finds himself in this kind of like in this fight or flight, this flight kind of mode, he finds a cave, he starts to hide. And as he hides in this cave, he hears the voice of God say, go, like he finally feels safe and secure. And the voice of God says, go out to the front of the cave. He's been running because somebody's trying to kill him. And yet God says, go out to the cave. I'm going to be passing by. Now, if I'm Elijah, I don't know if I move. Like the circumstances behind it, right? Like, I don't know. If I finally hit a moment of security, finally hit a moment, it's like, I don't know if I go do that. But yet God says, no, come on. I'm going to like reveal myself to you. And then he does. And then you want to talk about chaotic. There's a driving wind that's knocking down the mountain. There is an earthquake that is knocking down the mountain. There's a fire. And God's not in any of those, but it's more chaos. And then finally, Elijah feels the presence of God, knows the presence of God through a small whispering sound. It's a moment of courage, though, for Elijah to even put himself to experience what the Lord might want to give him. In the same way, in our gospel today, so today's gospel, it's on the heels of last week's gospel, which was the multiplication of the loaves and fish, right? And it's probably one of the most famous encounters that Jesus has on the lake, on the Sea of Galilee with the apostles. We just heard that Jesus, he multiplies the loaves and the fish. So the apostles are firsthand seeing this take place, right? They see the multiplication of the loaves and the fish. They know 5 loaves, 2 fish don't feed 5,000 people. And yet 5 loaves, 2 fish did feed 5,000 people. And we got the scraps afterwards, right? Like we picked up all the scraps. We got all the leftovers. We brought it back to Jesus. And then Jesus looks at the apostles and he says, y'all go ahead. I'm going to catch up with you. So they put the stuff down. Great. They go ahead and they're going to take the boat across the Sea of Galilee. Now, when they take the boat across the Sea of Galilee, I think there's a couple of things for us to be aware of. Number one, the way where the Sea of Galilee is located and like the mountains and stuff that are around it, what would typically happen on the Sea of Galilee is that the weather patterns are kind of unpredictable even today. Well, what would happen is that storms could kind of flare up and go down pretty quickly. They get really intense storms and then they kind of go away and dissipate pretty quickly. We know about this in South Louisiana. You can have a really intense storm and 10 minutes later it's sunshine, right? Same kind of thing on the Sea of Galilee. Secondly, all the apostles, right, they're the ones that are getting in the boat. Chances are most of the apostles are from that area, from Galilee, from around the Sea of Galilee. We know at least 4 of them, Andrew, Peter, James, and John, all were fishermen by trade. So at least a substantial part of the 12 apostles know about what it means to cross the Sea of Galilee, to be in a boat, right? They would fish at night, so they know what it's like to be in the Sea of Galilee at night. They understand what this is like. They understand what this feels like. It's a very, very familiar space that they find themselves in. And yet, as they're crossing, a storm flares up. And then we hear that there's this moment where they are terrified. That they are absolutely terrified because what do they see coming towards them, as familiar as they are? Something they've never seen before. Somebody walking on water. Now, one of the things we can do sometimes is that we can hear the miracles of Jesus, and they'd be like, we've heard them so much that they become kind of, oh yeah, we know Jesus did that, right? 5 loaves, 2 fish, he feeds 5,000. That means 5 pieces of bread and 2 fish, and he feeds like the enrollment of nickels, not counting women and children. That's a lot of people that eat from a little bit. Like that's an actual miracle. That's something that's very, very, wow, oh my goodness. Like that is an amazing, amazing thing to see. In the same way, when they're on the Sea of Galilee and they see somebody walking towards them, if you would go and sit on the bayou side and you would see somebody just walking down the bayou, you would probably be a little bit freaked out. What the heck are they doing? This is a miraculous thing, and they are familiar with the area. They're familiar with the sea. They're familiar with this, and there's a storm going on, and it's such an outrageous thing that they see that it stops them in their tracks. They are utterly terrified by what they are seeing. Frozen. There's a lot of chaos in both of these readings. And all of the chaos that's in both of these readings is not enough to filter out or to stop the Lord from entering into the situation. I always find that this time of year, this back to school time, or we're coming off the summer into school, this August, like from now until basically Labor Day, there's oftentimes a lot of moving parts, kind of getting back into the swing of things. Like elementary schools are back in school, high schools are back in school, middle schools are back in school, college next week, we're getting back in school. Like everything's back up and running, back up and people are moving, people are getting plugged in, people are kind of settling into new schedules, new ways, all this kind of stuff. And there can be a sense and a lot of chaos that's going on, right? What has been settled and kind of stagnant over the summer all of a sudden gets moving, and everything seems to get moving immediately at once. Recruitment, classes, sports, everything gets moving immediately at once. And all of a sudden now, what was very peaceful and quiet, all of a sudden becomes very chaotic very quickly. In the same way in our first reading and our gospel, the chaos doesn't stop the Lord. For us, does the chaos become too big of a distraction? The same Lord that finds Elijah in the chaos of his life and starts to whisper to him. The same Lord that is walking on the Sea of Galilee, doing a miracle so that the apostles will see him, so that the apostles will stop, so that the apostles will focus on him. The same Lord enters into their chaos and wants to enter into ours as well. Wherever you find yourself. Start new classes, start new school year. If you're a parent and you're running your kids around from one thing to another, going into a new school, going into a last year to school, and you don't know what's going to be waiting for you after that. But the chaos isn't enough to mute the Lord. In fact, I think Peter for us today is a great example and a great place for us to reflect. Because notice, Peter is one of those apostles. He's the leader of the apostles, right? The caricature of Peter is that he's the most seasoned on the water, that he's one of the older guys, right, of the apostles. That Peter is kind of the leader. He's got responsibilities behind him when he sees all the apostles in the boat, that he's one of them that's trying to take care of them. And he sees Jesus, and Jesus looks at him and he says, "It is I, do not fear, do not be afraid." And Peter, whether it be from sarcasm, whether it be from prove it, Lord, whatever it is, he looks at Jesus and he says, "If it is you, let me come to you on the water." And Jesus' response is very straightforward. Come on. It's my translation, but you know what I mean. Peter, though, I think Peter gets a bad rap in today's gospel, because at the end we hear about him sinking, right? We hear about Jesus pulling him up and saying, "You have little faith, why did you doubt?" and all this kind of stuff. But Peter is the most seasoned one of all of the apostles. He's the one that is a fisherman by trade. He knows water. I'm sure if he spent the time fishing like he has, if he spent the time in storms and stuff like he has, he understands that when you fall out of a boat, guess what happens? You sink. And Jesus looks at him and says, "Come." Peter takes one courageous step that none of the apostles do. None of the other apostles do. And he steps out of a security of the boat and says, "Lord, you say come. I'm locked in on you. I believe you are who you say you are. So sure, I'll try it." Now, we don't know in the scriptures if Jesus was right next to the boat or if he was a long distance away from the boat. He could have been 10 feet. It could have been a half a mile. We don't know how far it was. But we do know that Peter steps out of the boat, walks on water. And while he's walking on water, as long as he's focusing on Jesus, as long as he's locked in, as long as he's saying, you are the Lord and I believe in you and you can achieve this and you can accomplish this and you can pull me to yourself, then I can do the impossible. And he walks on water towards him. And it's not until the rest of the chaos starts to work its way in that he sinks. As we approach a new school year, as we approach this season, as things get back up and running and busyness starts, whether it be you move into a new school, you're coming to this one or whatever, what's the one step that the Lord's saying, trust me, come to me? What's the one place that the Lord is inviting you to take an extremely courageous step? My second year at LSU. It was my first year at LSU. I went to LSU. I said I went for electrical engineering. That's a lie. I went for student tickets, and I never missed a class, and it was great. Right? But like I went through and I did all my stuff, and I was like involved with stuff on campus. And my grades were decent. At that time, they got worse. We're not going to talk about that. But like I just remember like when I first got plugged in, and I was like rolling around, and I was enjoying LSU. I'm doing all this stuff. The one thing at the end of my freshman year that I remember just like I felt a lack of was that I didn't dive into my faith. That my faith had become something I was like, I remember I moved into campus and I was like, I'm going to be the best Sunday Catholic ever. Like Sunday and that's it. God, you get 1 hour. The rest of the week is for me, right? Like that's great. And I remember that was like a very, very clear distinction, a very, very clear decision. And then after my first year, I was like, I'm missing something. So when I walked in my second year, I remember saying, I'm showing up and doing something. So for me, that one clear step was walk into Christ the King Catholic Center and meet somebody. And the two guys that I hung out with are still some of my best friends. What's the one thing that the Lord's saying, come? What's the one thing that the Lord is inviting you into? Maybe it's something that, you know what, a few 6 months ago, Lord, like you and God were on a great spot. Y'all relationship was great because it was Lent and you had been focused. And since then, Easter happened, summer happened, everything went cold, and this is the first time I'm back at church since Easter. Father and I would hate to admit that, but welcome. Maybe it's, okay, Lord, or Father, at some point in my life, I was very, very plugged into my faith. I really enjoyed it. And yet, like, there's something that's been missing, and I just need to show up and do one thing. Maybe I've never done anything before, and you know what? The Lord just has been putting on my heart to do one thing extra. What is one step that the Lord's inviting you into? And can you have the courage to say yes? Reality is, Peter, the part about Peter that gives me the most hope is that he fails. I think what can happen is sometimes we can feel like, hey, I need to do everything absolutely perfect, and I don't do it perfect, then to hell with it, and it went terrible, and it went bad, and it's not worth anything, and that's a lie. Can we love God even imperfectly? Like I'm going to walk out of here and I'm going to say every day, all semester, I'm going to go 30 minutes to the chapel, and then you miss the second day. That doesn't mean that 30 minutes every other day is not a good thing. Can we love the Lord even imperfectly? Because prayer is not just a check off or a list or a formula. But we're coming to meet a person. Peter says yes to a person. God wants to invite you into a relationship with a person. What's the one courageous step that you can take to respond to the person? Tonight as we come to Mass, that person is inviting you to himself. and he says, come. How do we respond?